afternoon, and evening, everyone, and I'm Laura Steward. Welcome to the SaaSMAX Crossing the SASM webinar on pipeline management. It's so exciting to have you here today. And I said good morning, afternoon, and evening because we have people registered to attend this webinar from all over the world, so many different time zones. So whatever time zone you're in, or if you're listening to this on the recording, welcome. We're so glad to have you. This webinar came to be because of your feedback. We had a webinar on lead generation to help you grow your business because SaaSMAX really wants to help you grow your business. And people kept writing in, how do we do pipeline management? Once we get the leads, we just have trouble managing that part. So that's where this came into being. Little details about today. I'll go over the presenters, how we're going to be doing everything today, a little bit about SaaSMAX, all about pipeline management. We're going to dive right in, and then we're going to do some Q&A. A little bit about SaaSMAX. We are here to help you as a reseller or a vendor reach more clients. Our goal is to match you with the perfect vendor to grow your SaaS business, or the perfect reseller to grow your business for your products. We do both sides. And what I love about SaaSMAX as a former MSP is it makes my life easy. And I don't know about you, but growing your business should be easy. It shouldn't be a difficult process. Some housekeeping. We're going to be doing this live with video. As you can see, I'm right on here. And then our two presenters will also be appearing on video. We're going to be talking a lot about pipeline management and how you can do it. If you have some questions, we'd love you to type them in the question pane that you'll see over to the right side of your screen. It'll say questions. Please type them in, and I will be monitoring them and asking the questions throughout the webinar and at the end as well. Please take a moment to take our survey at the end. We find that we get some of our best ideas on what you want to know about by your responses to the survey. So, are you ready to learn how to manage a successful pipeline? Here we are today with Kendra Lee and Todd Martin. Kendra is the president of KLA Group. You probably recognize her from a couple of our other webinars where she's done how to hire your salespeople and how to generate leads and how to manage them. Todd Martin is the vice president of Pipeliner. He is one of the vendors in the SaaSMAX community as well, and somebody that we use to manage our own pipeline here at SaaSMAX. So Kendra, Todd, welcome. I'm so excited. And look, the video all worked. Isn't it exciting? It works. I love it.
Yeah, thanks for having us on today. This is great. We're really looking forward to it.
I'm so looking forward to this. So let's just dive right in. So that everybody's on the same page, how would you guys define pipeline management and why it's important? Kendra, why don't you start?
To me, I define pipeline management as monitoring all of the opportunities that you have that you're working. And for us, we start monitoring after the first appointment when it's qualified, all the way through close. I think it's important on the sales rep side because the sales rep can't keep track of every single opportunity that they're working. Hopefully they've got more than 2 or 3. And so it allows the sales rep to see where is everything and what do they need to be focused on. And from a management perspective, gosh, you can't even run your business if you don't know what your pipeline is because you don't know how many resources you need or how you're going to deploy them. So to me, it's a critical element of your business. But that's the accountant in me talking.
The other aspect of Kendra we didn't even talk about. Todd, what about you?
Yeah, I like that old Jerry Maguire movie, the show me the money, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think we can all say it out loud, and I think that's not only what the individual salesperson wants to say, right, because that's why they're in sales, but also the management team, and really trying to create a systematic approach to understanding where that money's coming from. Okay, because sometimes we just kind of have it in our head and we can name our few deals that we have coming in, but for the whole entire company, how can we really assess what's currently going on, but also the future of that revenue stream? And so I always like to encourage people when you're creating a sales pipeline to let's nail down the exact sales steps that we're going to follow, everywhere from what Kendra's talked about in her previous webinars about lead generation. So when you get the whisper of that new lead coming in, how do we then follow it all the way to the close of the deal? So that way, I think we can look at predictability of those numbers and how they'll really turn out.
Well, I like what you just said, predictability. One of the things that I struggled with the most when I had my MSP was, I know it was all in my brain, but that didn't mean my staff all knew everything that was in my brain. And we didn't have a really good pipeline management tool back then. So having something where everybody has visibility, how important is that?
Yeah, I think that's, maybe I'll jump in here because this is what I'm so passionate about, because, it's like every sales rep wants to, use it, right? They want to have their own and figure out where the money's coming from. But then we forget about the different people that are involved, right? Usually that salesperson will have a sales manager, right? And so how do we help that sales manager kind of monitor the process of all the deals that are going on for an individual rep, for coaching purposes, but then the entire company. And then you take it to that next level up above that, and that executive, how are they going to monitor the, the expenses, the allocation of money for everything and resources, and really, I guess the whole purpose is how can we really minimize the risk there as well for that executive team for some of those decisions they have to make a little bit longer term.
I almost look at it as from a manufacturing perspective, even though that's not, we're not in manufacturing ourselves, but you can't know how you're going to plan what the needs of your business are as an executive if you don't know what's in the pipeline. And historically, sales managers were taught that you never report up more than a percentage of what's actually in your pipeline because it might not close. But when you have a good resource that you're using and you're really monitoring your pipeline, then you can do so much more effective business planning. And then I'm sure we'll get into it, but you can even determine where's our sales team very effective and where are they not being effective. So you want, as Todd said, you want the whole organization to have visibility so that they each can do their piece of the job more effectively because they know what's coming.
One of the things I noticed when I started initiating more of a pipeline management was that oftentimes when you never necessarily thought about bringing engineering teams in. But when the engineering teams saw what was going on in the pipeline, they often helped close a deal that you never thought that they were really part of it. And I'm not talking about, a sales engineer or something like that. The guys that are actually out in the field doing the work, they would put a bug in the ear of a client and say, hey, I know you're talking with our sales team around something or other. And then they'd start a conversation, and next thing you know, it helped to close a sale because they were now involved in the process.
A lot more ownership. And I think they get excited. Todd, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I mean, because selling is so dynamic, right? It's always changing. There's always all these different pieces going on in every direction. And I think, the really true, I'll call it great salespeople, okay? And you know who they are, right? We all kind of know who they are at your own company or, your associates. And they have this ability, I think, just to kind of like focus down on like what's really important. And I think when all of a sudden they hear those different tidbits of information from that engineer or from someone else in their company, I think they're able just to kind of put it in perspective and then act. And I see that with a lot of software tools trying to help that and encourage that process for the pipeline management.
So how do you use your pipeline then to perfect your sales process? Because I think that that's a large part of it, right? I don't believe that pipeline management is just a thing. I think there's more to it. Would you? I'm seeing by the shaking heads that you agree on. So how do you use that to perfect your sales process to close more of that business? Who would like to start?
I'll start. I'll go with,
okay.
I'll do the sales perspective, sales rep perspective, and
Okay.
then you do the sales executive perspective. Todd, how does that sound?
Perfect.
So from a sales rep perspective, to be able to look and see in your pipeline where things tend to fall out or where they tend to stall, that's where you can look and say, what do I need to do differently? Either what's the training I need or what are the resources that I need? Why are things stalling? And if things aren't moving through the pipeline, you can look and ask yourself, what do I have to do to get it moving forward again? Or, hey, this contact said that they wanted to start our managed services on June 1, and here we are on May 9th, and they haven't talked to me in the last 2 weeks. What do I have to do to get that moving forward? So being able to look at your pipeline and really look at the opportunities that are there, you can start to diagnose, what do I have to do differently to move it forward? And then what might I have to do differently to improve my own closing rates or my rates of conversion as you move through the pipeline? Mm-hmm. That's the way I look at it from a sales rep perspective, and really empowering sales reps to be able to do that, to encourage them to take that ownership instead of leaving it up to the sales manager to come and say, hey, I noticed that you're not converting very well from your first appointment to your second appointment, or wherever you are in the process.
So you really have to keep your eyes on that process and where it's flowing. Todd, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and just from the management perspective, I think it's always a good idea to maybe just take a look at a couple of the closed deals that a company's had in the past, right? The good ones, the ones we all applauded, right? Because it was like done right. And I think sometimes what we need to do is just kind of write down what happened, right? And then that ultimately becomes the process, right? The pipeline. And I think a lot of times we kind of forget about that, but let's put them in buckets from the second we see that lead, and we have it now, right? And then what should happen next? And what are like the big changes? We know the buyer moved it, not the rep, the buyer moved it. And then how can we really look at it and say, what are some of those things we need to do at each of the different stages? And I think
like
all of a sudden we're doing
analysis.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, this is bucket one, and it doesn't move because you sent them a proposal. We all wish that happened, but it moves because they acknowledge it or they do something to move it forward. And so I always like to say, create the stages along the way. Maybe you don't need more than 4 or 5, really, okay? But then within each stage, then really start identifying the necessary items versus the nice to have. Once again, not very many, but a way to kind of keep track of it for everybody. Most importantly, the rep, right, Kendra, like you talked about, but then also so the management can then look at it and then analyze why are things dropping out, and they can help each other then.
Exactly. I think that win analysis, which is interesting because there was a period where in enterprise companies you would do a win-loss analysis, especially if you lost a big opportunity. Well, now if you're truly following your pipeline and with the tools that are available, you don't have to wait until you lose the big deal or win the big deal to do that level of an analysis and really see what's working so that we can replicate it for the next time.
So using the flow of your pipeline and how things are closing to create a process if you don't already have one.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And that's what Todd is saying. You can look at where you had a good win, and you can ask yourself, what were the things that I did that got me to that win? And then you can get to how long does each phase of a process normally take. But your pipeline is so much more than just how much money do we have in it.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I mean, sometimes we get caught here of trying to track too much data, right? We all have so much data, right? It's everywhere. And I always like ask the top salespeople, like, well, what was it? What are the little things you trigger on each of these stages? And you'd be surprised, it's not very much, And I see some people want to like track everything, and that becomes such a burden to your best reps. The non-best reps want to click everything and fill everything out, no problem. The really good ones, though, they don't need to track that many items. So I always like to say, let's not get carried away with the clicks and the buttons and everything. Let's keep it on the core items. Those, I don't know, the one little things that they can really focus on, and I think that'll make all the difference in the world to someone starting out here.
Are there some things that you typically see are consistently in a successful pipeline?
Yeah, I have it. So the way I see it, a lot of times, at least when I look at people and I say, I say, share your screen, show me the pipeline, the process that you have in place. And a lot of times they say, the first thing we do is this, and the second thing we do this, and the third thing we do is do this. And I'm like, yeah, but what about the buyer? What are they doing over there? And so what they have is they move all the way through this great clean process, but there's no triggers. You got to remember, it's a buyer-driven process because they're the ones doing the buying. So I see that a lot, Laura, from a perspective of, I think, some of the initial mistakes.
Kendra, I see you jumping.
Yeah, when you think about the sales process, you're aligning your sales process with the buyer's buying process.
Mm-hmm.
And as Todd had said before, you really want to look at how is the buyer pulling themselves through the process. It's because there was something that they were really interested in and they want to move it forward. And so it's knowing what are the triggers and the things that a buyer has to do at the same time that you're going through your sales process. When we work with clients and we define their sales process, we often define the buy cycle at the same time that we do the sell cycle, because reps have to remember that.
So I just got to use aha.
Oh, good.
And it was just like, oh, wow, okay. So here's my aha based on listening to what the two of you just said. If your pipeline doesn't close, maybe you're not thinking as a buyer. You want to sell something and you're going out to a client base that really isn't the right client base for what you're trying to sell or how you're trying to sell it. So the pipeline could also be a way of looking at why your business isn't growing.
Oh, yes. It's not the only
All right, it's
reason.
just like, ooh, I got all these other questions completely different to what we were planning on talking about today.
It's not the only reason, but it could be one of the reasons that people never even consider.
Mm-hmm.
So without pipeline,
I was just going to say they automatically go to, oh, our salesperson can't sell, or our salesperson can't close. Yes, those absolutely could be factors, but when you start analyzing the pipeline, you get much more insight. For example, as you just said, Laura, are we considering what's going on the buying side? Right. Do we have the right resources? Do we know how to position? Those things are training things. So there's more to it, and oftentimes they don't think about the buyer side.
Yeah. Also, I think a gentleman named John Golden kind of taught me this, and I really liked it because the way he used to position a lot of his sales team was about giving value at each of those items in each stage. And so he always taught me about, hey, you know what, like let's reward the incremental items. Like, okay, if it's stage 2 and you personally have to speak to them about the initial budget, right? Once they do speak to them, that's like a couple points. Okay, and then maybe we also need to learn about, I don't know, the why or the why not, right? And each one of those is work a couple. So I think it's good also, we can kind of, because when we start talking about the buyer-driven thing, it's like, let's reward the rep along the way too, so then they know when it's okay to move it, because no buyer is going to say, yes, move me to stage 2, right? We just have to kind of know that deep down and encourage it that way. So.
And I go a step further and say we don't want to just know it deep down. We want to have documented, so here, what are the qualification points that say it is now time to move to this next stage? We've done the things as a salesperson that we need to do to move from identifying the needs or gathering the requirements into now it's time to design the solution, or if you're doing a demo, do the demo. But we've done the things we need to do at that stage, both for the buyer and for us, and then we move on.
So that's a great lead-in to a question I have of measuring. I mean, I see the people that are currently on the call, and they're at all different size businesses. But it sounds like from what the two of you have been saying that there are certain things that you measure that are important to the process. Todd, you talked about how you help and incentivize, okay, moving to stage 2. Kendra, you talked about the different sizes of the organization and looking at the buyer and the seller, and both of you have talked about that. What should you measure throughout the pipeline?
This will be an interesting one, because Todd and I didn't prepare on this, so I'm curious to hear what he says. For us, because we focus so much on the front end of the sales process and all that we do with our clients, we're actually focused on the conversion as you move from phase to phase. And whenever I speak about metrics, I feel like business owners are looking for this long list of metrics. Like Todd said, yes, we could measure all sorts of things, but really what I encourage our clients to do is let's measure how many opportunities are converting from phase to phase to phase. At the very beginning, yes, you've got to do things like numbers of calls and numbers of appointments that are set, but they don't even enter your pipeline. Then that's just activities. When an opportunity enters the pipeline, we're measuring, of the numbers that start at the top, how many of them convert to each phase along the process. And then, yes, we're measuring the dollar value, but we're really looking for the conversion ratios.
Okay, define conversion ratio.
So we have, see if I can do this off the top of my head, different steps to the sales process. And the first point where we would have somebody enter an opportunity is after they've qualified that it's an opportunity for the first appointment. So I've gone and I've done the first appointment, I've completed it, and I've said, oh yeah, there's definitely an opportunity here based on whatever our qualification criteria are. I'm going to set another appointment with this client or this prospect. So now it enters the pipeline. And whether it's an existing customer or it's a prospect, once we've qualified it's a real opportunity, it belongs in your pipeline. And then from there, so we call that the ID needs phase. Then you move to the next phase, which could be a demo phase, depending what you do. So if you're selling software, you may have to do demo, or it's a deeper level of needs analysis. So if we're moving to a second tier, then I want to measure how many of those opportunities now move forward to the demo, if we're doing a demo or the second meeting. And then if we're doing a proposal, how many move from that phase to the proposal phase, and how many move from the proposal phase to the close phase. So that's what I mean. It aligns directly with the steps of your sales process.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Todd?
So,
yeah, and I think that's perfect. But I also see it, I think a lot of people, who maybe don't have a pipeline, haven't really done this before, sometimes they don't even know the basics from the start to the end, the result, right? And so sometimes the big conversion is we got a new lead in from either total or from this one campaign we spent money on, and then what came out the other side total. So sometimes we just need to take a step back and say, reality is in today's world is let's get that done, number one, because that's a great metric, right? We paid this much money for a LinkedIn ad campaign or this trade show. We made how much at the end of the day, right? So I think that's number one, the best one, because it's the result at the end, right? And then being able to monitor a couple different things, like you said, the conversion from step to step, when they drop out, those are all, a good tool can provide to you. But what does that do then? And I think what it does, number one, it lets each rep know where all their deals are perfectly, right? It shows the sales manager the last thing you want really is the sales manager calling every rep saying, what's going on with this deal? What's going on with this deal? What did you meet them? Did you do this? And so by moving them, like you were talking about, Kendra, from stage to stage, then the sales manager knows what's going on. And then from even a marketing standpoint, it's like, wow, why are we losing all the deals stage 2? Oh, that needs analysis, like which was your stage 2. Oh, you know what? Everyone drops out. So maybe we just need to rethink the process and go back to them and say, maybe we don't want those kind of leads. they all fall out. We're not qualifying them even correctly, and so let's change that part of the process, back it up a notch. And I think when you start looking at all these numbers compared like that, I think it's just, I think that's when a pipeline management tool is, like you initially said, kind of invaluable for an organization, because if the sales manager and the ownership are really involved in it, then it magically comes alive. And I see too many companies want to put it in like an Excel spreadsheet and try to look at it that way every week and email me your numbers. It just doesn't work that way. It's a dynamic, constantly changing focus that if you really can look at the numbers and analyze them the right way, it's incredibly powerful.
And stop trying to blame the salesperson immediately that, oh, that's what our problem is. It's like, wait a minute, as Todd said, if they're all falling out in stage 2 and needs analysis, is it that the salesperson needs training because they don't know how to qualify and they can't move them forward? Or is it that we've got the wrong target market? Or is it that we haven't educated our market? Or is it that we haven't differentiated ourselves? I mean, there's 1,000 questions you can start to ask when you can see what's going on in your pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
But the key is to use the pipeline, enter the data, and not just leave it there, it sounds like.
Right.
I know so many MSPs and vendors that just, they enter the stuff, but then they don't do anything with it.
Right.
But I think also, Laura, I don't think they enter it. I think a lot of times someone like has this great idea, we're going to do it, and they get off the call, they're recording here, and they're like, we're going to do it. And then a couple weeks go by, and maybe they even map out their process, and they buy some software to put it all into. But then at the end of the day, is the management team really looking at it and driving it? Even, or if you're a small business owner, are you looking at that and really analyzing it that way, instead of going back to the old kind of way of saying, okay, it's end of May, we got to get the numbers in, and what's coming in, email them to me. And I think that's where people start breaking down and they stop using a tool. And then once you stop it in those incremental steps, that's when I think it fails. It fails.
You have to use it.
Yeah.
Okay, so going to the have to use it. I'm a big person in goal setting is great, but if you don't have a process to manage your incremental to your goal, then there's no point in setting a goal, right? So looking at pipeline management and all the stuff we started talking about already, are there, I hate the term best practices because I feel it's been overused, but in both of your experiences, are there time points or practices that you've seen successfully work to make sure that it doesn't just become a one and done? It's, okay, we've entered it in every month, every week we need to review it. Is there some process?
Every single time you do something with that opportunity, if it needs to be moved in some way in your pipeline, it happens right after you've done it. If you've made a call and had a conversation, if you have gone out and met with someone, you come back as a salesperson and update the pipeline. You keep it current instead of making it an event that every Friday at 8, I'm going to go in and update my pipeline. When you had to keep it in Excel, you had to do that. But with a tool now, you don't have to do that. You can update your opportunity as you're using it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's different than it was a long time ago. Or some people are cringing, like, oh, I gotta update it.
But more paperwork. Yes.
No, I know. Trust me.
Set up, you just go in and do it, right? It's
exactly.
a 5-minute thing.
I don't even think it's 5 minutes anymore. I really don't. I think the way we have the devices on the mobile device now, with even text, tell you our reps, what they do, they don't even type in call notes anymore. Period. They hit a button on their iPhone and says, okay, do the call notes, and they click it, and then they talk, and that's the call notes. Click, and then you click another button saying, okay, I took care of that stage. It literally should only be that long, whether it's on the computer or the mobile or the iPad, whatever you're using. But yeah, it's easier now. It really, and I like that.
That's why I say it's not an event.
Kendra, hold on one sec. Somebody's having trouble hearing you, and you've been so excited. Can you just move your mic a little closer?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
It's not an event anymore, is what I would say. It's it used to be an event. It's not an event anymore. If you make it part of your activities when you're selling, then you're just doing it. And as a sales manager, you integrate it into your weekly meetings so that the reps see that you are using it. And they do, then they know they have to keep it current.
Yeah, like back in the old days, like IBM had this thing, they used to call it the war room. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that expression, the war room, you know?
I know that. I worked for IBM.
Okay, there you go. Okay. So, this is going back a while. Okay, I got some gray hair to prove it. But it's one of those things like we even do it in here and we do it in our software, but it's like, let's really analyze what's going on as a group. And so all of a sudden your sales meetings aren't about like what deal's going on. It's like, let's have everyone kind of strategize with you on how to win the deal. It's a game changer when you're talking about bucket to bucket and what's going on. It becomes kind of fun, in a way of like, how can we win more business? And then all of a sudden your reps are like, oh, I'm not getting like grilled about how many calls I made and how many blah 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 blah. It's about what is some suggestion, or how can I leverage my CEO on this deal to win it? And I think that's key. So that's number one. The second part is when it comes to using it. I'm a big believer that when that lead, when it's alive, right? You smell it. I think it needs to go in there. I think it needs to be created, whether it's created as a lead or a contact or whatever you call it. I think once it's in there, it starts the process, because number one, you don't forget about it, okay? But number two, it protects you from maybe other people in your company from maybe going after that same deal. But it starts everyone thinking about, okay, now I got a new lead, this is what I need to do. And I think that's the greatest way to just keep the system alive and breathing, those two items.
So Todd and I differ on when we would enter an opportunity. That's okay.
No, we are agreeing.
The company just has to set in motion or make in stone, this is when an opportunity gets entered. And that's a question I get asked all the time. When do I enter the opportunity? And so as a company, you agree, does it go in when I've got the first appointment? Does it go in when I think it's a prospect I should pursue, like my Hot 100? Or does it go in once I've qualified that, yes, there's a real sales opportunity? We wait until there's a real sales opportunity and keep the others in prospecting in a prospecting process. But as a company, make your decision.
Yeah, because everyone's different, right? Everyone has like a little different flavor. It's like, that's why I tell don't let me tell you. That's your decision, right? And you make the decision when it's a lead, and really there's value. And like I think you brought up earlier, like, oh, maybe when you have that first meeting, right? It's once again buyer driven. The buyer agreed to meet you. They showed up. It's now an opportunity. No one just magically moved it from one bucket to another. It's like something happened, and I think that's where we agree 100%.
So you both kind of agree on it's not just when somebody hands you this, maybe that goes into your prospecting.
Yeah.
It's when something happens, because you've got this, but this could just be somebody was an event and that was it.
Yeah.
The pipeline is part of your process.
There's one thing I would add that I see a lot that comes up with a question. People feel like I can't enter an opportunity until I know what the value is.
Okay.
And that's not the case at all. Todd, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I agree 100%. It's sometimes you don't know the value. Yeah, if you sell one thing and it costs one price and they're either going to buy it or not buy it, yeah, it's easy to put a value in. But in most B2B scenarios, there's options, there's versions, there's all these different kind of components that can go into it, and maybe it's not all at once either. Maybe it's a gradual thing. So no, I think it's really when there's the money there, right, and you know it, and it's quote unquote qualified. I think that's really, I think, where you can all agree. It kind of becomes an opportunity then. Yeah.
And you can estimate it, and I guess this is something I would share with business owners, if that's who we have listening. You have to allow your salespeople to put an estimated value, if that's required by your system, and allow them to change that. So if it's 50,000 today, but it goes down to 30, it's not attacking the rep on what happened. Same thing, if it's 30 and it goes up to 50, it's not saying, why didn't you forecast it better? And as a salesperson, recognizing that it's okay to guesstimate. I mean, we all know after that first meeting when a prospect says, yeah, I think I'd like to talk more, we have an idea of what it is that we're going to be selling. We don't know for sure, but we can at least put something in there if your system requires you to put a dollar value, but put it in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so we've touched a little bit on quite a few things. Todd, you mentioned about that meeting where you're reviewing the pipeline with the salespeople. We have a question that came in that feeds to my next kind of thought with where we were going. And the question was, should pipeline review with sales reps be one-on-one or a group review? I want to take that a little bit further from that question and ask, what do you think that meeting should really be focused on? Todd, you mentioned it should not be about you're not hitting your quota.
Well, I mean,
what makes that effective?
I think anytime you're going after you're not hitting your quota, I think that's more of a one-on-one discussion, right? So I think one-on-one, what I use it for is coaching, right? I try to go through each of my reps kind of deals that are there, and also looking at, you know, a couple different things, okay? Because every rep's a little different, okay? So what we try to do is find out where their strength is. I have some reps, they can close the deal like nobody's business. You put it in, it's right there, they get it done. And I have other reps that are really good at the very beginning part of it and moving it to a certain stage. So I try to help them identify where their strengths are and then work with them on a little bit kind of where I can help is and help move it along that way. I see too many managers though think they're the closers, right? Because maybe they were the top rep and now they're in this, that they just want to focus on stage 5 of 5, right? And it's like, no, you're talking to your closer too. Go back to stage 1 with them and help them on that. And so on the one-to-one scenarios, I like to really kind of identify and then go into each deal specifically on how we can move it or strategy to get more in one particular area. In the group ones, it's different. Okay, it's more about having other people. Well, number one, it's about showing your peers what you have. Okay, it's a little ownership there. And high-level reviews, because I think what happens there is you start hearing, oh, I have a customer in the same scenario. Oh, I just had this brand new case study. I just got a quote from my other person. It's not even on our website yet. So you start seeing this collaboration between the different reps, and that's when you start getting that, it just becomes alive.
Kendra, want to add to that?
I agree on all that Todd has said in the sales meetings, because we work with companies that may only have one sales rep. They may have 5 or 6, but they don't have big teams, and often it's the business owner. I get asked the question about what are we supposed to do in sales meetings all the time. I think you want that level of collaboration. There also is some of the competitiveness of looking at, well, what are the opportunities that we have coming up and where do we need that level of assistance? So it's not about holding, how do I want to say, it's not about making any one particular rep look bad in front of their peers. Instead, it's looking at what do we have going on and what do we have to do to move things forward. The other thing I see in sales meetings, or I recommend, is that there's some aspect of training, and that's part of what Todd alluded to in the one-on-one. In the group, you can pick something that would be of benefit, and it doesn't mean the sales manager is doing it. You can have that strong sales rep that's great at closing talk about something that they've just done and how they closed using a different technique. But your sales meeting can be an opportunity to train the reps and keep them really sharp.
Does managing your pipeline differ if you've got 1 or 2 sales reps versus 100?
I don't think it does.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't, you know. It really doesn't, because a lot of times it's broken up maybe regionally with different sub-managers, so those team meetings just become smaller divisions of the overall thing that you have with so you have 3 reps right? It's usually maybe the 3 reps, maybe always invite your marketing person, always a good idea, and maybe the owner participates in those meetings as well. So all of a sudden that's a 5, 6, 7-person meeting, and that's probably maybe 10 people is like a normal regional breakdown between a manager and their 8 to 12 reps. So
you're still doing the same basic thing. It's just when you have that many salespeople, you have a different management. You have the management structure times however many. And your managers should all still be managing to the pipeline. It's where it becomes even more important to have pipeline management, because an executive just can't have that view of what individual reps are doing. The pipeline gives them that view.
So we've looked at salesperson perspective, we've looked at management perspective. From a business owner perspective, looking at it from a little higher level, is there a way for them to understand how much revenue they should maintain in the pipeline? What shows a healthy pipeline for their business? Because sometimes you look at it as a business owner and you go, I've only got 2 things in there. Well, maybe those 2 things could be, $1 million worth of business, but it's kind of scary. And maybe you've got 1,000 things, but probably maybe 90% of them will never go anywhere. So how do you know what's a healthy pipeline?
I wish we had the magic answer. I don't think there is one.
Come on, you guys have to.
If you say it's, there are some standard figures, right? I think a lot of people are like, 3 times your 3 times your quota, 5 times your quota, 7 times your quota. But I think the fact of the matter is every business is a little bit different, and every rep's a little bit different. So that's why I think when you start getting really great software in place that can really analyze those numbers about how many leads do you need to get in, right? Number one, how, the fallout ratio per stage, or, kind of ticking through the different boxes that really kind of back it up then. So you say, okay, hey, in order to get this number and our average deal size is X, then we need Y in the funnel. And you start panicking if you don't have that in there, or not panicking, but you know what you need to do. In other words, you need to call Kendra and say, hey, I need to create some more leads. So help me, right? Because I know I see it coming 90, 120 day or 6 months down the road that I'm going to have a gap.
And our rule of thumb that we tell people until they know the metrics of the conversion is 3 times your revenue target or your quota, however you are assigning it to your salespeople, should be in your pipeline. When you start looking at the conversion ratios between the different stages, then you can get much more specific, as Todd said, and know how many do I need at the top and how many do I need coming down each stage. But until then my rule of thumb I tell people is 3 times, which by the way is really hard for sales reps to get. It's what you want. And you don't want, Laura, the $2 million deals, because what if your close rate is only like 30%? You're out of luck.
You're zero.
Right. Yeah, sure. Are there tools that, Todd, I know you're here from Pipeline, or Kendra, I know you personally use a bunch of different tools. What are some tools that you recommend business owners have, sales managers and sales reps to help them be successful with the pipeline? Kendra, do you want to start on that one?
I'll start. Our clients typically have a CRM that they're using. And so for me, I don't say, gee, you have to use a specific one. Instead, it's make sure that you are using the one that you have and that you're tracking the opportunities and you're paying attention to it. So use it. Because too frequently, as Todd said earlier, what we see are salespeople who don't put the opportunities in until it's like ready to close. So there's no value there. So to me, it's use the tools that you already have in place. Although, Todd, just yesterday, I talked to somebody who only uses ACT. So go for it and tell them about Pipeliner, because I think it's a good
There you
tool.
go. An old company I worked at many years ago. Exactly. So yeah,
I used ACT, loved it.
I didn't even know ACT was still around.
but you can do so much more.
Of course.
Yeah, and as a little plug of the company, it's pipelinersales.com, and it's a great tool. It's and I think someone from SaaSMAX who uses Pipeliner too noted earlier on the call, it was like it's just an easy visual tool that can help you kind of get it from stage to stage, and it has imagine every report you can imagine from a sales manager, from an owner perspective about pipeline management and velocity and close rates. It's kind of already built for you. Okay, so yes, I'll give a little plug there. But Kendra, to your point, if you have something, use it, encourage that, maybe do more training, take time with your team to sit down and customize it. And don't forget, I think we look at the stack of tools that we start loading salespeople up with today, and it gets scary sometimes, so don't be scared to cut a couple of those out. Yeah, you look at your Google or your Microsoft suite, your LinkedIn and your Twitter, and then this tool. Don't overload them. The good reps will ask you for the different things that they need and spend the money that way. In order, I think, for lead generation more than anything.
So the ideal thing is whatever tool you have, use it. Put
call
particular reminders in the system, or call Todd. As I said, SaaSMAX uses Pipeliner to manage our pipeline, and it's always been a process. I know Clint Gatewood's on the call, our channel chief, and he relies on it to help with every aspect of the sales process to make sure it's flowing and it's working, and we refine our process.
I don't know, Laura. I kind of like my spreadsheets.
You do not.
But I think also there's a lot of options out there. For different types of businesses and for different sizes of businesses, there's a lot of variety out there for you. So if you need help picking one, SaaSMAX is great for that. And pick the one that's right for your business, because they're not all made equal and they're not designed for everybody. In other words, if you deal in a B2C world, versus B2B world, or you deal with a buying cycle that incorporates multiple people and multiple companies, you need to roll that together. That's one tool. But if not, then there's a lot of other tools out there. So.
Okay. I'm going to switch over to our next slide over here just to say that we're taking additional questions. There's some really good questions that have just come in. One of them is, do you have any advice for one-person business owner who gets outside sales freelancer to help find him leads and convert them?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Okay, because number one is start tracking them. Okay, number one, get them into a tool. Okay, get those contacts, those accounts, and those leads from that person into something where you can then look at and see if there are results at the end of the day. Because I see too many people paying for leads or just getting random leads, and sometimes they don't ever turn out. So start knowing if those are the best lead sources, and then maybe do more for that particular person that's giving you leads. So no matter what the size, I highly recommend getting something to help you track that sales pipeline.
I'd recommend that as part of your tracking, not just what are the lead sources that are producing, but which ones are producing the best results, but what types of leads are they delivering to you? So are they delivering the types of accounts that you want to be working with? And there you may need to switch your messaging, but being able to track it will help you to determine where do you need to make adjustments in your strategy.
I think Robert, who asked this question, is also asking if you guys have some advice, and we talked a bit about this in the lead gen webinar that we did with you, Kendra.
Okay.
Where do they find somebody, and then they would use pipeline management to manage that.
Oh, where do we get our leads?
How do you find somebody that's a sales freelancer? Kendra, I know you help people do that, and SaaSMAX is helping our resellers find leads as well. But a bit of advice that either one of you might have if you're trying to find somebody?
Okay, is the question they're trying to find somebody to help them find leads, or they're trying to figure out where to find the leads?
It looks like they're trying to find somebody to, and Robert, feel free to type in, to help them find a sales freelancer and convert them. So it sounds like they need to find somebody and then run a pipeline with somebody outside their organization. Is that something that can be tracked through pipeline management somebody outside is bringing the stuff in.
Oh, it's an agent. Are we talking about 100% commission or an agent or a referral source?
Yeah.
I'm not understanding the question.
I think I get it. I think because we do it here, right? I have a lot of partners and consultants that I work with. I give them full access to our system, and they can go in and add their own and work through the similar process and see exactly what stage we're at and what we're doing. So I think there are ways to kind of tie everybody in. I think you'll struggle with having an independent person do much work, right? A lot of times they like to just give a lead and get out. And so I think you just have to be able to adapt to both scenarios. The lead producer only kind of person versus the person that's involved with that person on a more of an ongoing basis.
Yeah, so now I see the way you're answering. In my first book, I wrote 2 chapters around how you can use other people to find leads. And in doing that, how can you actually quota them so that you can plan on how much could I get from somebody, and then how do you manage them to that? So you absolutely could put their opportunities in your pipeline. I would tell you, treat them similarly to how you would treat a salesperson, in that you're going to check in with them very regularly, just not as frequently as a rep. Like a rep, you would check in every week. With an affiliate partner or somebody that's a referral partner, you want to be checking in with them maybe monthly, maybe every other month, depends on the frequency, and have a conversation with them about what you think you could do together, and then start tracking how many opportunities they're passing to you. So you absolutely can do that.
Okay. Another question that came in. Several companies are in startup mode. What 3 things would you say are the top 3 things that a startup needs to focus on with money constraints, investor demands, etc.?
To me, I mean, you've got to drive your opportunities. So you've got to go get your first sales. You may not have to do full-blown lead generation, but you've got to find a place to go get your sales. So you have to focus on that. And you have to be tracking those so that you can see, are they moving forward? Those are the top 2 that I would give you. You got to go get your sale first.
Yeah. And I think also, make sure your message is right. In other words, know your target buyer. A lot of people don't, and if you know your target buyer, not the target company, the target buyer, and then design that message around it, and then be able to go get those leads and be able to get it done. So I'd almost say, first thing as a startup, I'd maybe get some help if you're not good at that. There's some great consultants out there that can really help you identify that target buyer, that target message. It'll make your life a lot easier when you try to go get that new book of business too. And then the second thing would be, Kendra does that, see, right there. Call Kendra. Well, then you could talk a lot more about that. So.
No, go ahead. You said second thing.
It went away after you said you did it. So there.
Oh, I'm sorry. So
it's coming back to you now.
And here, we'll get him back. So you'd said the target market and get their message. Does it bring back to you what else you were going to share?
Yeah, I don't know.
Gone. Okay. Next question, Laura.
Well, it's interesting because the question was raised around startups, but really your answers apply to not only startups, but established businesses. Once again, we go back to having pipeline management where you're actually using something regularly and inputting it, and having a sales process helps you see, am I targeting the right customers with the right message, or and the right products, or do I need to reevaluate? It's a great way of looking at your business on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And if you're a startup and you're looking for investors, wow, you've got some great data right there.
Yeah, and I think that's the key part, right? Because creating that repeatable process, I said at the beginning, repeatable, right? A system. If you can create that, it's easy to hire a lot of salespeople and run them through the process if it's working. I see too many people that are owner-run, very small shops, and the owner's kind of winging it, right? And I think we need to get around the winging it mode, even though it works, right? I'm not saying if you're a small business owner, you know how to get the deals done, but start writing it down so you can then go through and really create that pipeline. And it's going to be incredibly difficult for you, and it's going to take a lot of discipline to follow that, but I think that'll help you with hiring. okay? Because you don't have to hire someone that's going to do exactly what you're going to do. Let's just call that impossible, right? So let's define it and then hire pieces of it. And then you gradually will phase out maybe your involvement from the day-to-day sales involvement. Next thing you know, you have 5, 10 salespeople moving along.
I've asked for elaboration on this one question. It hasn't come in yet, but let's see how you guys respond to it. Should pipeline be based off of close ratio as well?
Yeah.
The close ratio is the final conversion. So when we talked about the metrics and what you're measuring, the close ratio is that final conversion from proposal or quote to close. So absolutely you want to know your close ratio. It goes back to what Todd said about how you can figure out how many leads do you need coming in if you know your percentages all through the whole pipeline.
Yeah, and even a step further with really cool sales software, you can actually take a look and say, okay, from stage 1 to the end, what's my percentage? So I see a lot of companies backing it up. They'll go back quarterly and update saying, okay, for every I have a qualified lead, maybe I call that stage 1, right? We close 10% of those. So that's 10% on that stage. And then you look and say, okay, of the ones that make it into stage 2, what percentage of those close? And then you start identifying those percentages per each stage. It sounds like a lot, but at the end, it's like, oh, wow, okay, now we have all the numbers making sense along each phase. So you get the whole thing, and then you get each section of it as well.
We've gotten some comments in the question pane saying, the people who are asking questions, thank you, really valuable. That worked, thank you. So they're really getting a lot of value out of that. Another question, and this will be the last one that we take because we only have a couple minutes left to the top of the hour. How do you get your salesperson, I love this question, I love all of them, but how do you get the salesperson to make entering the data a habit? Every rep would rather be making sales than filling out data.
To me, it's using the data. When they see that you come to a sales meeting and you're using it and you're referring to it, they'll see that it's not optional and not making excuses and taking their Excel spreadsheets or what have you. I think it's using it.
Yeah, and I have my son, okay, who's 12. He plays this game called Fortnite, and I ask him all the time because I'm like, well, why do you like it? He goes, well, it's fun. It's easy. Look, I can get this wood thing. I don't know, whatever they play. But if you're using a tool and it's not easy, if it's not easy to on the phone add a new person or make a call or right from your Outlook to be able to click and add a lead and have it magically just go in there, or from LinkedIn saying create a new contact, if it's not that easy, you may be just using the wrong tool. You may want to look around for something a little more modern.
Or modern. I love it.
Oh, that's so perfect. I remember the days when I started my business in the early 90s, everything was on a whiteboard or in your head, or, even though we installed massive systems, now it's all right here. And as you said, we need to make pipeline management accessible wherever the salesperson is and let them know that we're doing stuff with the data. Because if they know that we're doing it and aren't just saying, yes, I want you to do this, but never follow up, then what reason do they have to do it?
Yeah.
I want to thank you both for being here today. This has been so much fun doing it with video so that we can see you both, and how excited and passionate you are on these topics is really great. And we're going to be sending out to everybody that registered for the webinar several free things that you guys have offered. Kendra, want to share what you're sending out to everybody?
Yeah, so I'm giving you a link where you can download the 10 questions to ask when you are interviewing sales reps, because you want to have the right team in place when you're working on your pipeline. And there are 10 questions we found are really effective.
Great. And Todd?
Yeah, we have 2 ebooks we're going to be sharing. One is called Creating a Sales Pipeline in 12 Steps. Okay, so hopefully it's a step-by-step guide. And the second one is maybe a little insight into what the salesperson's going through and really maybe how to get clarity when it comes to them. So those 2 things. I think you'll like them.
All combined together are really great. And if you happen to be listening to this on the recording and you want to get copies of those, just please email me, or you can reach out to Clint Gatewood, our channel chief, our VP of channel, and he can help. We can get all that information over to you. Here at SaaSMAX, we are all about helping you grow your business in the cloud. And in order to do that, we get to have wonderful people like Kendra Lee of KLA Group and Todd Martin of Pipeline talking about how you can grow your pipeline. I want to thank everybody for being here today. We have a survey at the end of this. Please, please, please answer it, because we love to be able to help you and we need to know the best way to do that. Have a really great day, everyone. Kendra and Todd, once again, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.